Every week we look at articles and things, and this one comes from the people at Allianz. And we'll give you a little view into what that's all about. They're asking people about the state of retirement. How do you feel about retirement? And every year, the same things come up. I'm worried about inflation. I'm worried about healthcare, and I'm worried about running out of money. But here's a couple of things that came out of this that I thought were interesting. People said instead of chasing high returns, I'm more interested in consistency, protection, and predictability. 74% of people said that they would rather use financial products that protected against major losses, even if it meant big gains. And 92% of people said they wanted products that gave them guaranteed income. So we don't want to work anymore. Our work life, we don't want that, but we do want the paycheck to continue. And that is basically the trick of retirement. Now, Phil, this is what you do. You sit down with people and you look at what they've done for retirement and say, this is what that income is. Give me a little idea of how that you go about that.
Yeah. So regarding this article, just like a frame of reference, Allianz is an insurance company. And
Right.
what they are most known for is writing annuities with income riders. So
Shocking.
not surprising that 92% of people would say they want products that offer guaranteed income, because that's exactly what Allianz does. They're probably the largest in the world at income riders. And I would say what people really want is they want their cake and they want to eat it too. We want to have safety, growth, income, all of the things. And I want to get it all in one account. And the reality is there is give and take with any investment. Right? There's not good or bad. There's just give and take. And when it comes to the income riders at Golden Reserve, we're not huge fans of these, because what you're getting is that guaranteed lifetime income, but you do give up so many things to get it. You give up a lot of growth, right? Oftentimes we see an Allianz or an income rider annuity have much lower growth annually or cap levels on them. You also are locking yourself into an income stream. So in a way, you're trading in that 401k for a pension that you can't adjust, which we know we've talked about spending in retirement. It's kind of like that smiley face, where we want to be spending more in our healthy years in retirement, where we can enjoy our money doing the things we want to do. Whereas if we're locked into that income stream, we may not have that flexibility to spend more earlier in retirement. It's just a flat level plane throughout. So when it comes to risk and income, I'd echo that. I think the key is, let's just grow your portfolio with the right amount of risk, right? Get an understanding of how much are we willing to lose? What's the most we'd ever want to lose in our portfolio? Let's set up our investments to echo that, so we can't lose more than what we're comfortable with. And then let's just use our money as we go. So now we have the flexibility where there might be bigger years, right? There might be the Disney years like Greg's going to have, where we're going to pull more out of our accounts to spend and enjoy it. But now we have that flexibility if instead we're tying it into some income rider pension option, like an Allianz income rider.
Greg, it's like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. There is other ways to develop income, other ways to get paid in retirement as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jiminy Christmas. When you see these articles, like, they're onto something, right? It's frustrating because it is a interesting dynamic that is counter to the majority of the financial industries out there, which is, let's be protected against major loss. Let's give up some of the bigger gains. I like that part of this article, right? The 74% from Allianz is saying people want consistency, protection, and predictability. That feels good. That feels responsible. That feels human. That feels normal. Now, then they slap it with the 92% want guaranteed income. And who doesn't want guaranteed income? Who doesn't? I mean, what kind of a silly question is that? Do you want guaranteed cake, Randy?
Yeah.
I want guaranteed cake. Guaranteed pie? Yeah. Right. Guaranteed pie. Would you want guaranteed anything? Yes. But in the fine print, what gets lost, and Phil touched on this, and I think it's really important for people to kind of break down what guaranteed income means. It means if I give you $1 million, they say that they'll give me back 5% of that account value every year forever. Forever, Randy? Is that what you're saying? Forever? So let's do some math and tell you what that really means. If you're 60, that means if you're taking 5% out of your money, and let's say your money doesn't grow, just to make the math easy, that means over 20 years, Randy, guess what that money's coming from?
You're
just paying yourself back your own money. That's all you're doing. 5% times 20. Now, let's also play the game of what's the average life expectancy in America? 78 and a half. Okay, so if I need 20 years to get all my money back, am I ever going to take advantage of that guaranteed income? In the sense of, am I ever going to get any of the insurance money versus my own money? This is what gets really lost with the guaranteed income products and why we don't use them and don't like them. They're very easy to sell, but they're usually not very good buys. What we'd rather do is take a account and say you buy that same $1 million, instead of saying, here it is, you have it now forever, no matter what. Instead, we say, all right, let's do the $1 million. Let's do a regular annuity. And let's say it's a 5% annuity or it's got a 10% cap or whatever. Who cares? And it grows every year. And here's a wild thing, Randy. You can take up to 10% out of it every year, not 5%, up to 10%. Some years you may take none. Some years you may take 7%. Some years you may take 3%. It all depends on how you're living your life. And that is the right approach, in our opinion, to retirement. Let it reflect your life versus what some insurance company is trying to actuarially shake you down to get the most fees. They're doing this to make money. They're not guaranteeing your income out of altruism. We feel so good that we're going to give you more money forever. No, they know the math. They will win. That's why they own stadiums. That's why every NFL stadium is named after an insurance company. They're doing all right because people keep buying guaranteed income products. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So as part of this process, Randy, we do an income forecast that goes along these same lines. People try to do income plans. Financial advisors try to do income plans. Instead, we do an income forecast that simply looks at what you spent last year, and we use that number. And we forecast it 25 years from now to see what's left in your accounts, assuming a very modest 5% growth. And what that does is it gives you confidence. The goal isn't to say, here's how not to spend your money. Usually people's accounts get bigger. I know that's the crazy part. People's accounts get bigger because they're not spending enough because they're scared that they're going to run out of money. Well, this tool actually is your real life permission slip to enjoy more of your retirement. Income forecast is part of every roadmap we build. If you come in, we do a complimentary one when you first sit down with us, and then we update it every year for our clients. But it's a great idea where you're just sitting there saying, what am I actually doing? How am I actually living retirement? Let's use that. And then let's update it every year based on how I'm living to see what's left, to see if I could speed up or slow down my spending versus just guessing and then ending up at the end of the road with $2 or $3 million in an account of unlived memories, Randy. That's our goal here, is to make sure that you're living your best retirement, spending your money and enjoying what you work so hard to grow.
Any job that you would take, your first question would be, how much do I get paid? Your new job is retirement. Your question should be the same. How much do I get paid? That should be your first question leading when we sit down and build your roadmap for retirement. GetYourRoadmap.com is the website. Start there. GetYourRoadmap.com. You'll see a place to put some information in there. Our team will reach out to you and we'll talk through what needs to be done to get you on solid footing for your retirement. This guy apparently has been hearing these formulas where you should have 5 times, 8 times, 10 times your working year's income to do well in retirement. So he asks this: does a monthly retirement pension for the rest of your life count toward the 8 times amount? Or should the 8 times be stocks, bonds, 401ks, and 403bs? Greg, first of all, you don't like those formulas. And second of all, let's help this guy.
So, the 8X rule is easy and cute, right? Your last year of earnings, let's say you made $100,000. This formula would say you should save $800,000. People like cute, simple formulas. I think you should always be wary if something's a little too easy. It probably doesn't work as well as it should, because what the formula should say, to this guy's point, well, it's 8 times earnings minus an annualized pension amount with the time value of money factored over the average life expectancy of the retiree. That doesn't sound as good as 8X. It just doesn't work as well. So here's what I would challenge anyone. Talk to a professional. Even if it's just a regular Joe financial advisor, at least they'll give you some breadcrumbs here. This is like the do-it-yourself, are you working? The worst thing you could do is work longer than you have to in a job you don't love. And I think that's what is missed. That's a whole year of your life. How many spins on this beautiful planet do you have left? And do you want to waste one doing something you abhor? And I think most people would say absolutely not. So this is a huge decision, and why it's so important to get people involved before you pull the eject lever. Now, at the end of the day, most people, I know the financial industry is not going to like this, but you can kind of live to your means regardless. Some people just are tired of working. They just stop working. They may not have as much saved as they want. That just means that their retirement's going to look a little different. Maybe they do a little less traveling, or instead of going overseas, they go to South Carolina. I don't know, right? There's a compromise in the working relationship of savings. What I do know with an undisputed data evidence is that after building a estate planning and law firm for the last, almost, 2010, 15 years, people usually don't run out of money, which means that a lot of people could have retired probably earlier, or they could have spent more, or both. So when I look at these 8X rules and all of these items, this guy's right. Of course, we should be factoring pensions in, right? If your pension is $80,000 a year, that substantially changes your saving requirements. Now, There's other things to consider, your travel budget and all those things, but to just rely on a income driven tool ignores the most. Now, there's two parts of this equation. You're ignoring the most important part of this equation, which is the expenses. Everyone's expenses is different. Everyone's goals are different. Everyone's expectations are different for retirement. You have to have some metric that factors both in. And I think that's where you get started, Randy. You got to have a plan put together that says, all right, here's what I make, here's what's coming in, here's what's coming out, and then here's what's left over in my savings. And that's what I got to pull off of from my other money. And by doing that, you get a real feel of how you're going to live retirement. And most people are guessing. They don't know what they're going to do until they get into retirement and start driving that bus. But I do think it's important to make sure that you feel confident that you have some flex to go up and down. And when you have that's a big deal, Randy. And I think, again, going back to the income forecast, that's a big tool, but also make sure you're protecting against some of the big risks, overpaying fees and investments, tax planning, long-term care, unexpected prognosis is, the market risk. If you have too much in the market, what if it goes down and that goes backwards? To me, it's more important about the fences you build around the savings, more so than a magic savings number.
Phil, do these formulas, and there's so many of them, the 4% rule and the 8 and the 10% or 10 times your salary rule, do these get in the way sometimes of people actually coming to see you thinking that I can't go see Phil until I've got that number, or they get in there and they say, well, I haven't got that number yet. I don't know how I'm going to do here. Does these things get inside people's heads?
I think they can confuse people, but we get all the time where it's like, Phil, I think I'm doing okay. Like I look at the 8x rule and it looks like we're accomplishing that. I look at the 4% rule. It looks like we're connecting there. I think I'm doing all right. Can you just make sure I'm doing okay and tell me everything else? And then now we start highlighting all the things Greg talked about. Like, well, let's open this box up a little bit. Let's talk about taxes. Let's talk about market risk and income and fees. Let's talk about your estate plan. And that's when the magic really starts happening, where their eyes are really opening up. It's like, whoa, I thought I was okay, but like now I'm realizing I don't think I've been in the same game. I think I've just been, maybe checking the boxes that I knew were out there and easy. So hopefully it's not stopping people from coming in and seeing professionals, but I think there's definitely a different box that they need to open and make sure they're checking.
That might be how you feel. I think I'm okay. I hope I'm okay. I wish I knew if I was okay. Well, the way to know that is to do the math on your retirement and to sit down and actually put together a roadmap for retirement for you. Are there any boxes that we don't have checked yet? The tax box, the long-term care box, all these different things that we're going to talk about on the show today. Let's get all those boxes checked off. Getyourroadmap.com is the website. All right, so we talk about retirement and the baby boom generation. My brother was born in December of 1964, so he is absolutely the tail end of the baby boom generation. But on average in this country, about 1 million to 1.3 million people per year retired. After COVID, that number went up to 3.6 million. A lot of people just hung it up and said, that's it for me. And 2 years later, here we are in 2025 we have 4 million people per year retiring. And that's just continuing to go up. So one of the things I wanted to ask about this, Greg, is this. Like when there's a hurricane down in Florida, you see all these bad actors come out, bad roofers and people who take advantage of people who sell $10 bottles of water and $10 gas and all that kind of thing. All these people want to retire and they want help. I got to believe there's some bad actors out there. And what do people need to watch out for?
Yeah, I mean, they're the wolves. The wolves of the industry, we call them. If you've read our book or seen our material, we always akin ourselves to the sheepdogs, and the wolves are out there, and our job is to kind of protect you both from the wolves of the industry and hopefully the wolves that can affect your retirement. And I think the buyer beware signal, here's my rule of thumb. When you start getting gimmicky items being the primary part of the conversation, pump the brakes and step out of the room. When you hear things like this product does this investment does this, they're selling something, right? They're selling a gimmick. And the reason that they're relying on an investment or a product is because they don't have the services to win your business. If you can't rely on what these people do to help you, then you're in trouble, right? Like, when I think about when someone mows my lawn, Randy, I don't ask, what kind of mower you have? What kind of mower is that? I have a Turbo X77. Can I mow your lawn? Like, I care what the lawn looks like, right? Does it look good? The happiness of retirement should be the gauge of the success of the financial professional in someone's life. And I think we get so caught up in some of the gimmicky ones that I always say, be careful of target date funds. Huge, huge marketing scam, in my opinion. I have to say in my opinion, so I don't get yelled at by compliance. In Greg's opinion. Income annuities that we just talked about, I don't like them. I think you're paying too much for them. I think you're getting too little. I think they're just doing it because you're scared and they're taking advantage of a fear, not giving you a great solution. And otherwise, a good provider could help navigate your income needs without the reliance on an overpriced product. Complicated variable annuities operate the same way. They have a lot of fees, mutual funds and insurance wrapped into one on a huge fee coming out every year that you can't get access to. You can't get your money out. So if the buyer beware to retire, if you're listening and a retiree and you're getting a product sold to you, if the majority of your meetings or these seminars you go to are about talking about products, pump the brakes, pump the brakes. If the majority of the meetings about services, are they doing your tax planning? Are you talking to attorneys? Are you talking to CPAs? Are you putting together plans? Are you doing work where you can see a long relationship that requires them to be involved with you every year versus a product sale? Because I promise you, here's what will happen, Randy. The second that sale is completed, the services end and they're on to their next sale. Where when you have services that are required every year, Golden Reserve has 2 meetings a year, an annual review meeting and a tax meeting every year. We update the fees, the taxes, long-term care, attorney meetings every year. All of these things are services to ensure that you're on the right path because life changes as you go down in the retirement mountain, Randy. Health changes, finances change, family dynamics change, and all of those should be reflected in your retirement plan. If you don't have someone talking to you and involved, it's the same reason like you go to a doctor every year to check in. Your financial service purchase should be the same. They shouldn't be just shoving graphs down your throat or talking about your grandkids. They should be talking about your plan and updating it and massaging it and making sure that there's enough changes to reflect your goals as your goals change in retirement. And that is the whole idea of why we built the roadmap, because we were tired of people, whatever it was 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when we built the roadmap for the first time, we were tired as estate plan attorneys of financial advisors not talking about the things that mattered. And when we start talking about things that mattered, it becomes very clear what's missing in a retirement plan. And by doing that, you can make it safer. You can make it more predictable. You can make it more fun because you're not worried about an investment performing or something you bought. Instead, you have a service provider that's with you shoulder to shoulder for the rest of your retirement. That is the whole darn idea of this game that the industry seems to have missed since the 1980s.
And Phil, you see people when they walk through the door. You see people who've been other places, worked with other financial advisors, and then you see what they react to when you see what Golden Reserve does. Do you see people go, nobody said anything about this before? Why didn't my other guy say this? Do you run into that a little bit?
Yeah, or sometimes it comes out in different ways. Sometimes we're fighting how the industry has pitched a lot of people, where they're like, okay, so what do you guys invest in? And they're trying to force that conversation. It's like, hold on, let's break this down. Like, why is that so important to you rather than all these other services that we've been talking about so far? And the answer is, well, that's just what everyone's talked to me about. And there's no real logic to it. It's just, this is what it feels to me like this is what matters. And Greg's notes exactly what came to my mind. I mean, the industry is just behind. Where in the 70s, 80s, you can argue the 90s, this did make sense. You have people like Peter Lynch consistently outperforming the market. And then computers came out and changed everything. That's why all of them got out of the game. That's why one of the biggest active managers in the game today, Warren Buffett, said when he dies, he's putting his money into the S&P 500. Right? Because he believes and understands that the game has changed and we can't keep playing this old game. We have to play the new game, which is services. It's not just picking investments. That's not how you win anymore, because investments are a commodity. Sometimes when people come in, they come with that investment first mindset. We've got to kind of switch them to like, hey, this is actually what matters. And then it's like that moment where it all clicks. It's like, oh, it's not always about how much I make or how I make my money, but it's how much of that money do I keep, right? How much does Uncle Sam get versus what I get? What happens if the market crashed and I lost 40%? And meanwhile, I'm spending and using my money every year, right? Oh, does any of this matter if at the end of life, it all goes to a nursing home and doesn't go to my kids?
Randy, we spend 4 hours, give or take, in our meeting process over 3 meetings. Of that 4 hours, I'm going to guess roughly 15 to 20 minutes is actually talking about investments.
Interesting.
That is how important all of the other items are, because no one has a lawyer down the hall or a CPA across the road that actually, that they are part of our team. We own and control all of the pieces of the puzzle to make it work. And I think when you start diving into the tax savings and the fee savings and the market risk, is it worth it? And the income forecast, and you start looking and you start laying all these things out, there's just a lot of questions. There's a lot of conversations that have to happen with every roadmap. And it takes time to kind of educate while also informing people, here's where you're at. Here's your gaps. Here's where you're in great shape. Here's where you could use a little work. And here's what we think you should do. And it's fun because people, even when they go to our seminars, we get the same response. You have the plate lickers. You know who you are. You know who you are. Who wants a Thursday free meal? We're going to get the neighbors. We're going to take some people and register because it's our favorite steakhouse. Well, we get that and we appreciate it. You're still welcome, Mr. And Mrs. Plate Licker. But at the same time, they always say, this is the first seminar we've ever been to or dinner workshop where we actually talked about retirement. And the reason is because we tell it in the form of client stories. I think most people relate and can connect better when they hear things in stories that relate to their life. And that's how we run our meetings. Most of it is experiential. And it's not this prescriptive data approach of investings and formulas and all this stuff that no one can relate to. But when we start putting it in terms of how you live your life and other client stories and things that went well or things that went wrong, it really does put it in a whole new light. And people start to understand and have those aha moments like, yeah, maybe I should think about the largest tax liability in my retirement, i.e. my IRA, and stop waiting until 73 to use Uncle Sam's plan. But that aha doesn't happen unless you can speak to them and meet those clients where they're at, Randy. And a lot of times they're not close to where most people are at. You have to go down there, tell stories, be patient, and hopefully give them enough information where they can start to put together themselves.
So many of us are so concerned just about investments, but when we here on this show every single week talk about risk and taxes and fees and long-term care and income, there is so much more to be explored and so much more that Golden Reserve does as far as services are concerned. And you go ahead, compare Golden Reserve to everybody else and see what you come up with. GetYourRoadmap.com. GetYourRoadmap.com. You'll start there, and there's a place for you to put some information in there, and our team will reach out to you. We'll put a roadmap for retirement together for you today. All right, by now you've probably heard about that big robbery at the Louvre in Paris. They stole over $100 million in jewels, but they've caught most of them. And what they revealed, how did you guys get into the Louvre and steal all this stuff? And they said they guessed the password, which was at the front door. You know what the password was? Louvre. A couple of real brilliant people putting that one together. So, Greg, sometimes simple is not the best protection. Let's talk a little bit about this because you've always said that it doesn't have to be rocket science. Your investments do not have to be complicated, but we've got to be a little bit better than password Louvre. We've got to do a little bit better than that. Have you seen sometimes when people try to take a simple approach and they get a little bit vulnerable here? The people come in and when you look at their plan, this could be a real problem for you.
Yeah, I think of two or three things that relate to risk and not so coincidentally relate to what we focus on in our roadmap. The first of which is taxes. So the simple approach to taxes would, of course, as we know, do nothing, right? Wait till 73. Do nothing and use the required minimum draw, which is Uncle Sam's plan that starts taking money out at 73, and then it progressively goes up, starts at like 4% or so, and then keeps going up over your retirement. And then the balance goes to your surviving spouse when you pass, where your tax rates can increase, and then they could increase again when it goes to your kids when the money ultimately transfers at the surviving spouse's death. So to me, that is a simple approach that can cost you not just tens, but hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's not a, hyperbolic statement. That is a fact. We see it because at the end of the day, Randy, we are talking about substantial amounts of, account values. Your IRA and your 401k for most retirees are their largest accounts. You got $1 million in it, $2 million in it, whatever it is. And then you're paying, 10%, 15% if you have a tax plan that's yours, or you can end up paying 25, 30, 35, even 40% if you use Uncle Sam's. I mean, gosh darn, just do the math. 400,000 versus 100 or 150,000. That is real lost tax savings because you did something simple. You just try to make it too easy. You just used Uncle Sam's plan. You didn't want to go outside the norm because it was easier to kick the can and not pay taxes. Let's do another one, market risk. Well, what happens if I was working and, I had a certain amount of risk. I had all my money in the S&P 500 when I was in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s. And then I got to retirement and, I was making all that money the last 10 or 15 years. So I just left it in there. Let's just keep doing the same thing. Let it ride. Let it ride, Randy in Vegas. Just keep pushing it out there. Well, then what happens? Well, then in 2022 happens, or 2009 happens again, or who knows what's going on this year. Every time you blink, money, we're up 5%, we're down 10%, we're up 5%. I mean, it's scary times. And I think it's the simple thing is to keep doing what you've done. But the reality is that you're no longer a 30 or 40-year-old, employee that has another 30 or 40 years to get, obviously, get through the entire rest of life. At retirement at 60, you have 20 years, maybe 30 years, and the money has to last. You don't have the benefit of adding to the pot anymore. And the simple approach is just keep doing what you did. And unfortunately, that usually isn't the right approach for most retirees if they want a predictable, consistent, happy retirement plan, Randy. These are the things where sometimes, making your password Louvre doesn't make a lot of sense here. And I think you got to do the hard stuff in retirement to ensure that your retirement's happy. We want happy retirees. And to do that, sometimes you got to change your game up a little bit. And you have to do things that are a little bit more complicated to ensure that you've protected your most important financial asset, all of these savings you've been piling up for the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I think at least throw an exclamation point, right? Leave exclamation point. But I think the reality is why people take the easy route is because their advisors take the easy route. We talk about all these services and as though it's this is our value proposition, but this is actual work. This is actually a lot more than picking your investments. That's why advisors don't do the tax planning. Maybe they don't have the relationships with CPAs to do it, or they just don't care to learn how to tax plan. They don't have the estate planning relationships. So a lot of the people aren't necessarily the ones that are looking to take the easy way out, but all of the advisors do because it is harder. It is harder to tax plan. It is harder to make those relationships. Heck, it's way harder to do the Greg route and build a law firm, go to law school, get your degree and build a law firm, right? So I think that's the big miss is the advisors are missing it. Therefore, retirees are missing it.
A lot of us will go in there and somebody will say, do you have a retirement plan? And somebody will say, yeah, I got a 401k. Well, your 401k probably isn't going to do everything that you need in retirement. And it's a very simple approach, but there probably needs to be a little bit more than that. And we can show you what that is with our roadmap for retirement. We'll put one together for you at no cost or obligation. Let's get a really good look at what your retirement looks like. You can start here, getyourroadmap.com. What do you recommend we do with our 401k if we're retiring this year? Move to money markets and CDs and annuities? So obviously they're talking about de-risking. We're all told that we should be at lower risk in our retirement years. And Greg, is that the answer? It's literally almost moving to cash, money markets, CDs, and annuities. Is that the answer to less risk?
So Randy, let me ask you a question. All right, Randy, you and I are going on a trip. I say, hey, buddy, we're going on a trip. You're like, cool. And before you ask where we were going, you started packing. And he grabs the cooler. He puts Miller Lite into it. I know he's a Miller Lite guy. He packs that up. And next thing you know, he grabs his sleeping bag and a tent. And then he grabs, a parka and a bunch of heavy duty jackets because it's snowing up here in Ohio. And then, Randy shows up in his SUV and he's got, an entire back seat just packed with gear. I said, hey, Randy, man, I was just going to my daughter's soccer game with you. What are you doing, man? This is exactly what happens when you start planning with investments before you know where the heck you're going. And if anyone starts with investments, fire them or stop talking to them. If anyone starts making recommendations regarding investments in your first meeting, don't use them. Don't use them because they have no idea what your goals are, what your concerns are, what your life plan is. How in the heck can we pack that bag for Randy if we have no idea where he wants to go? To me, that is the biggest miss in the risk game of retirement because everyone wants to default to what they're comfortable with. I'm used to selling mutual funds. So what happens when you come in? You're getting mutual funds. Randy, you're getting a bathing suit packed, even though we're going on a ski trip. Doesn't matter where we're going. You're getting a bathing suit, probably a Speedo. Get ready, big boy. And that's just the way it works. If I go to certain financial shops, other financial shops, you're getting an income guaranteed annuity. Doesn't matter. It's like, hey, I'm going, we're going out west. Well, Guess what? You got all short sleeve shirts and it's 8 feet of snow. Well, that doesn't make any sense either. It's because they start with the tool without even knowing what the problem is. So be careful, American retirees, before you go on the most important trip of your life, which is retirement. And don't start packing your bags before you know where you're going. And I think that requires time. It requires expertise. It requires effort. It requires the L word, which financial advisors are usually terrible at. Listening. You have to listen to understand what's unique about each couple that you sit down with, to understand where they're going and what they want. What you want for them usually isn't what they want. And that is the big disconnect, and why most people end up getting too much risk in their portfolio. Because they're like, oh, you want a 10% return? Randy, I can beat the market. I beat the market 2 out of 3 years. And I'm going to beat the market, S&P or NASDAQ. All of a sudden, you're like, I don't even know what's going on. All I want to do is go out to dinner on Thursdays with a couple of friends of ours, and I want to go to Florida for a year. I've got an $80,000 pension, a couple $1 million saved, and I don't want to stress. Okay, that investment recommendation looks a lot different than someone trying to beat the S&P every year. And oh, by the way, I'm going to let Phil break down some market risk specifics, because I think the sequence of returns risk is something that almost no financial advisors maybe even understand or talk about with their clients when it comes to playing the blackjack table with our clients.
Yeah, sequence of returns is a big miss, often in retirement. And it's the idea of when those good and bad years come. In your working years, if you average 8%, it doesn't matter if you started hot or started cold. And as long as you averaged 8% by the end of the year, by the end of the plan, it's going to be the same returns regardless of when those came. It's different in retirement, though. Timing of it matters, and we can't control that. We don't control if the market's going up or down. Now, we could be in something like the S&P that's going to average us around 8%. But if those bad years come early, like 2000, 2001, 2002, then follow it by a 2008 just a few years later, then the likelihood of running out of money goes up drastically. So that's why market risk and safety matters in retirement, is to create more predictability, to have buckets of safe money to turn to. If the market tanks, we don't have to sell depressed stocks. We can turn to our safe money. So like the original question in this, like, should I move to cash? Should I have some safety? Yeah, absolutely. You want to have that safety net to turn to when the market goes down, and within that safety world, money market, CDs, annuities, all kind of operate the same. You just want to make sure you're leveraging, where are interest rates now? Where are they headed in the future? They're likely going down in the future. So we're thinking more long-term right now with our safe money rather than short-term like money markets. But you want to have that safety outlet in case the market does go down.
There's so much out there about less risk when you get into retirement. A 60-40 portfolio, an 80-20 portfolio, a 20-80 portfolio, 100 minus your age. That should be your risk. There's so much out there.
Speedo portfolio, Randy, do you have a
Speedo
Speedo
portfolio
on your way to a ski trip?
The old banana boat there. There you go. That's very risky if you saw me in that. Believe me, there would be women and children that would be running. That's high risk right there. But we want to de-risk in retirement, but we don't want to give up growth. Does it mean going to cash? Does it mean getting out of the market completely? I get it. You got all those questions. Let's get them answered for you. GetYourRoadmap.com. Just go there today. There's a place for you to put some information in there. Our team will reach out to you and say, okay, what's got you bothered about retirement? How can we help? All right. So a lot of people feel differently about retirement. It varies. It's all over the map. I always tell my story about a good friend that we saw at a hamburger place one time, and she came up to me and she said, January 29th. I said, what's that? She goes, the day I retire, and I'm scared to death. And then you get these people who go, only 36 more Mondays, and they can't wait to get out of work. There's so many different ideas about retirement. Now, Phil, tell me about how people feel and how you think people should feel about retirement. Should they go in feeling optimistic? Should they go in feeling pessimistic? And how do people usually feel as you go through the roadmap procedure and start building that? Tell me a little bit about how people feel as they come in.
Yeah, it might be as easy as having a plan before you retire than after you retire, right? So when we get people that come in, they build that plan maybe 6 months, maybe 3 years before their retirement, and they run through that roadmap process, start to see their income forecasts, and they start checking the big boxes that we talked about. They understand, okay, this is what my tax plan is going to look like. I'm making those changes now to get safer and preparing for retirement. I know where I'm going to be at from a cost standpoint. And I've got my estate plan lined up already. I think that preparing before retirement can oftentimes switch that mindset for you, and you can be a little bit more optimistic when it comes to retirement, as opposed to, it's been going well so far. All my money's in my 401k. I haven't made any changes. I think I'll be all right.
Mhm.
I've done the hard work. I think I'll be okay. Regardless, you're going to be fine, likely, as Greg's mentioned. Like in working in an estate planning law firm for 15 years, people don't run out, but when you can feel better and more ready for that if you've got that plan ahead of time.
So are there things that are in our future that you see? I mean, you guys always bring up taxes,
Mhm.
if you go to one of your seminars and say how many of you think the taxes are going to go up in the future, most every hand goes up. Does that worry you in retirement and in your planning as you move forward for people, the whole tax picture and the national debt and all that kind of business? Is that something you are pessimistic about?
Yeah, for me, I'm pessimistic of where tax rates are going. I'm extremely optimistic on right now and the fact that the importance of tax planning today. So who knows what's going to happen? Hopefully it doesn't just snap and tax rates are doubled. Hopefully it's, a process to get there. But right now, I mean, taxes are on sale. There's never been a
Mhm.
better time in our history to pay taxes on IRAs right now.
Greg, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, this article mentioned Bill Gates said, "Save like a pessimist and invest like an optimist." I always think these are lame when a guy with like $120 billion gives advice. Like, calm down, dude. Go back to your cabin in the woods and have a cappuccino. But I think save like a pessimist, invest like an optimist. I want to say it again because when we think about that, I don't know if I'd invest like an optimist as much I'd say invest like a pragmatist. Be practical. You know what you need. Don't be greedy. Like to me, the greed or the laziness kind of factor. And I don't mean people as, I don't think they're lazy humans, but I think they get lazy with their investments where they expect the same thing to happen over and over again, especially when we're 15 or 16 years into a bull market. Are you listening, America? We've been making money for almost 20 years. Do you think it's going to go on forever? Like, I'm not trying to scare people out of investing in the market, but I don't think they should have money in the market that they can't afford to lose. But that's really my point. My point is, if you can't afford to lose, it's like I went with my uncle Mark and my dad and my cousin Eddie, and we used to have this tradition before my grandfather passed, where we'd go to West Virginia and we would play blackjack, and we'd get up early Friday mornings. The wives and all the kids would go and usually go to the zoo or something fun, or go shopping and go out to lunches, and all the guys would go to the casino. And we're sitting there, and this year we went, and we all lost. By the way, in case you're wondering, yes, we all lost. We all played blackjack. And we were sitting at the table and we were laughing. And it's like one of those things. It's like, don't bet what you're not comfortable losing. That's the whole idea of gambling. And I think that holds true. As I was gambling, losing, I was like, this would be a great segment for the radio show. As I'm sitting there getting peeled and the dealer's taking 6 cards and hitting 21 against my 20, double down, I might add. Just a painful, experience as I was bled dry. But I enjoy the camaraderie. But at the same time, it's like I brought enough that I was comfortable. Hey, this is my entertainment for the afternoon. To hang out with my uncles and my cousins and have some laughs. And I think in the stock market, people should know their downside. And our market risk report does that, Randy, right? It sits there and say, here's how much of your money can go backwards. What percentage? Is it 20%? Is it 80%? And then from there, we run a simulation of a 2022, a simulation of a 2008-9, just to show, hey, what would your exact holdings and how would they perform in a down market? And then you could see all right, in a down market, my money would lose $317,000. Okay. Does that feel like a lot? Does that feel like a risk that's worth getting more and getting 10% a year? And people then get to have that mental exploration. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not here to tell you what to invest in, right? I give options and I can give recommendations. But then the day, you can tell me how fast you want to drive your speedboat in retirement. I have thoughts. Of course, I have ways in thinking about retirement. I wouldn't take risks that I didn't need. I think that's the definition of reckless, is taking risk you don't need. So when I ask someone, does making an extra 10% change your retirement? Do you do an extra trip? Do you guys go somewhere fancier? They're like, well, no. I'm like, interesting. So why are you taking the risk? To me, when you could probably do safe things that can get you 5, 6, 7%. Do you really need to take risks to get 10 to 15% if it doesn't change your life? I don't know. Maybe you just want to be the richest guy in the graveyard. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's your goal. But if it's not, you don't want to be holding your statements, on your deathbed that you beat the S&P for the last 3 years. I think most people would rather be holding a photo album full of the memories and life lived and grandkids and all kinds of fun stuff, that you made people's lives easier, that your money had purpose, that your money was used to create a retirement that you were proud of. And if that's not the case, then I think you probably need a different financial advisor, right? Like, I think that's why that's why I wrote my book. That's why we have this show, is like, maybe they're missing the point of retirement, which is not to accumulate zeros, which, by the way, so they can accumulate higher fees. Let's not go down that road right now. It's too late in the show for us to open that bag of worms, Randy. But I do think, people should start viewing their money a little differently. in terms of memory dividends? And are they getting enough memory dividends out of, are they getting that kind of return? Or are they too afraid every year because their financial advisor is talking about the cost of pizza this year? And now all of a sudden they're not doing an extra trip or doing for really no reason. There's not really any risk there. And I think those are the things that we want to talk about. We want to see what kind of memories we can help you build. And if that's something that you want to hear about, I think the roadmap breaks down the 5 big risks of retirement pretty, concisely. It shows you where you're at in terms of market risk, investment fees and advisor fees, long-term care and legal planning. Do you have a legacy plan? Do you have a plan for the nursing home? Taxes, as we've talked about, your IRA taxation. And then lastly, income. Do you understand kind of, where your income would be at the end of your life? And that really just shows you that you may not be spending enough money, which is a fun part. It's the opposite of what most people expect. We're showing people that they're not spending enough, which is a really fun conversation to have every year, Randy.
Well, we would love to get you all that information, and we do that for you at no cost or obligation. We will build a roadmap for retirement for you. You've saved all these years. What does it mean for you in retirement? Are there some things you're missing? Are there some places where you're in great shape? Let's identify all that and get you taken care of for retirement. Our roadmap is getyourroadmap.com. That's the best place to start. Getyourroadmap.com. Tool around the website. Learn more about Golden Reserve. Have a great weekend, and we hope you will be with us here next week on Fire Your Financial Advisor.